It's so cool to see something new sprouting up in the hill country. Thanks so much for sharing your great operations with us. I'm looking forward to eating some of those mushrooms. Right now, however, we're going to be talking about herbs, and we are joined by Ann McCormick, who is back, the urban cowgirl.
Urban cowgirl, that's me.
It's great to have you back on the program.
Thank
we had
you.
lots of fun last time you were on the show.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about a very special herb for Austin and Central Texas, cilantro.
Cilantro, oh, very much beloved in Texas.
Yes.
But it's one of the herbs that people will have problems in years where we have very high heat because they don't understand that in the real high temperatures, cilantro simply will not survive.
Yeah.
And I often get questions from poor gardeners who just feel that they have just failed miserably because their cilantro died by the time we get to late June, early July. And I am so happy to be able to say to them, it's not you, it's just the plant. and once they understand that it's a cool weather herb, and
Right.
here in Texas what that means is we have to grow it in two seasons. One is the very beginning of the year, like
Right.
as early as February,
Right.
to enjoy, so it'll grow during the cooler months, and then by, like I said, by Memorial Day it starts to head towards seeds.
Right.
Of course, the seeds are coriander seeds, which are edible also.
Right. And when it bolts, it's actually quite attractive.
It is, but it dismays people who want to have the cilantro
Of
leaves.
course, right.
So what you do is Labor Day comes around, plant it again.
Okay.
As the temperatures again start to slowly cool, you will have a second production of the leaves that people want, and they can enjoy that pretty much until the first frost, which sometimes is very late in December.
Yeah.
So we encourage people to grow cilantro as just a two-season herb, and they won't have anxieties over why their plant died in the summer.
Well, and or why their tacos are lacking cilantro.
Yes, because it is definitely a plant that's a staple in Tex-Mex food. No doubt about that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Now, for those people who are heeding the advice and want to plant some in the fall, are there any special precautions when the weather does turn cold?
Not particularly, because it really does tolerate cooler temperatures. It's like basil. When we really get to the point where we have a hard frost, it will die. It is an annual.
Sure.
And that's normal, but you will be able to have production for if you plant in September, October, November, and well into December. Well, and you can have plenty of tacos and enchiladas with your own fresh cilantro on them.
Okay, and just real basic cultivation on cilantro. I'm assuming full sun.
Yes.
And they do pretty well with some moisture.
Yeah, they do like to have regular moisture, and of course with the cooler temperatures you won't have to water them as much. They can grow in the ground as well as in a pot. But they really do need to be outside. They're really not a indoor windowsill herb.
Yeah, a lot of people try that.
But most herbs that we use for cooking are native to the Mediterranean area, as is cilantro. And so you just really needs that sun.
Yeah. Okay. So, problem solved. Two
I would hope
seasons.
so.
Now, another thing you wanted to visit about are what are called manger herbs.
Yes.
And I was completely unfamiliar with this term. I know what a manger is,
Well, good. Yes.
but
There are a lot of old traditions, symbolism associated with herbs and flowers and trees. But around Christmas time, there are certain herbs that are considered particularly significant, associated with the Christmas story of Joseph and Mary going to Bethlehem and the baby Jesus being born and laid in the manger.
okay.
And of course, this is a very rural image, of course, to us, and it certainly was. I mean, the child was out in the barn,
Right.
and so there were traditions that were slowly built up that said, talked about certain herbs that would have been used by Mary to care for the infant child, and had association with Christmas, and they were then used as decoration, as also as symbolism in the home and in the parish church. Because remember, for centuries,
Sure.
the majority of people did not read, did not have access to a Bible.
Right.
And so symbolism was the way that the Catholic Church reminded people of what they had learned verbally during the Sunday sermons. So that's why stained glass windows and traditional things such as manger herbs.
Okay. Well, speaking of manger herbs, there are a lot of our all-time favorites are on the list here.
Yes.
But there's some unusual ones that people will go, gosh, I've never heard of that.
Yes.
Bed straw is one, and this is, you could imagine it being useful in a manger setting. But,
Yes,
what kind of herb is this?
The full name is Our Lady's Bed Straw.
Okay.
The tradition was that it was used to create a bed for the baby Jesus.
Okay.
Has something of a sweet hay-like fragrance, and I believe it is one of the herbs that would also be used like pennyroyal, which is another one that's a manger herb, to help deter fleas and other biting insects. You wouldn't want to have your infant child someplace where it was going to be bitten by fleas.
Okay.
Everyone
Makes
can
sense to
understand
me.
that, yes.
I don't know about the donkey and the ox, but
But yeah, this was an example
Okay.
of a tradition that came up. Thyme, sweet garden thyme, has and still is actually used. Some of the essential oils from thyme as having antiseptic properties,
Right.
and that also to provide a clean environment for the baby Jesus, and that was one that was also considered a manger herb.
and lavender as well.
Lavender, of course, for the wonderful scent and the blue color, because blue was a symbolic color closely associated with Mary, the mother
Okay.
of Jesus, which is why rosemary is also on the list. That has a traditional story that actually goes beyond Bethlehem. Not long after Jesus was born, Mary, Joseph, and the baby fled into Egypt because Herod was looking to kill the infant
Right.
child. And the tradition says that as they were on their way to Egypt, they stopped at some point, and for whatever reason, Mary took her cloak, which was a bright blue, and placed it over a rosemary bush, I suppose, to air out. And the tradition says that before that, the flowers were white, but after that, that rosemary would have light blue flowers, which not all, but the majority of them still do to this day.
Right.
So this was something where if people who grew rosemary and would see the blue flowers would be reminded of the Bible story
Sure,
and the
sure.
flight into Egypt.
There's so many charming ways that mythology gets blended in with
It does.
plants.
It is.
You
It is.
And there again more favorites. Lavender is another one that is associated with the manger herbs. Correct?
Yes, yes. Again, because of the scent. One that we really don't grow very much these days is rue. Rue was commonly described as the herb of grace, because it was considered a cleansing and purifying herb. Rue was one of, I think there was one of two, I can't think of the other one, one of two herbs that I think would be used to sanctify a person or a place, where it would be dipped in holy water and shaken around. So it was the herb of grace. It was dispensing grace to those around. And so that has an obvious association with the Christ child coming into the world and providing grace to the world, grace and salvation to the world.
Well, there's so many cool stories, and we're going to have to visit with you some more about other herbs. But just real briefly, though, for a lot of the plants we just talked about, autumn is a great time to plant them, correct?
Yes, yes. Autumn is the perfect time to plant just about any perennial, not just herbs, because the cooler temperatures mean that the plant is going to be less stressed, because anytime you dig up a plant and disturb its roots, it's a stressful situation. It's stressful for us when we change houses. It's bad enough for the plants too.
Right, rip them up by the roots and put them.
It is actually a perfect time to do it, because then it also means that the plant has the winter for the roots to develop in preparation for spring.
Okay. Well, on that note, Ann, we're going to have to wrap up this interview, but we hope that you'll come back and visit with us some more about some of these amazing stories that you know so well. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
And anyone who's interested in the 12 herbs of Christmas, I have it in poem form on my website. Just find my website and look up the word Christmas and you'll find it.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Ann. And coming up next is Daphne.